Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I'm Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Mindhunter Season 2, Episode 2. Full spoilers for the episode, as always. So, this one, I feel like. Did we have every episode last season start with a BTK scene?
I'm not sure if it was every episode, but there was definitely a handful of them.
There was a handful. I don't think it was everyone. Maybe it'll be everyone this season. I feel like it was like 1, 4, 7, and 10 or something like that last season. It was like, it was kind of spread out like that.
I'll be honest, I'm not confident enough to say with any authority, given that it was almost 2 years ago.
Yeah, I feel like it wasn't every episode, so I was surprised to get another one at the start of this one. But sure enough, we get one where, and although I think what's interesting about this is that the theme of both scenes we've had with him this time are not him hunting victims; it's him dealing with his wife at home, and like because this one's this one's her like making him sleep on the couch, and she's still kissing him on the head good night and whatever, but she's giving him books about sexual deviance. Here, do some reading, heal yourself, please, because you're weird. Which actually neatly comes up in the conversations with the others later on when they're theorizing about BTK, and Holden at one point says, "Oh, he won't live with anyone. He's not intimate with anyone. He has to live alone." And we know differently, so that was a nice little touch. But so we have BTK kind of in the forefront, mainly from Bill to begin with. Actually, Bill on his own goes to the city where most of these killings have taken place and talks to the detective who was mainly involved with a lot of those early cases. And there was a lot of really interesting little details that came up as they're in the car, then like showing him the house of the first crime scene. This was the one where he ended up killing like most of a family because the husband and like the other kids were still there. Not all the kids. There was a couple of older kids that had moved away and basically don't want to be contacted by anyone because clearly their life was traumatized when their entire family was murdered. But just some little details that I really liked in here was when he shows them the cut phone line outside, he makes a point of saying that like everyone in this neighborhood, or everyone basically in the larger area now, when they come home, especially the women, if the phone, they always check if the phone's like still working when they get in the house, and if because if it isn't, then it's a sign that something might be wrong and the BTK might be after them, so they'll just immediately run for help essentially. I like that little detail, this idea of the effect that it's having, because he is becoming kind of infamous now, and people are expecting him.
Oh yeah. This episode really delves into it a lot more than I think that we ever have before.
Yeah, because we never really got to see what a lot of his crimes were last season. We just got hints and parts of his planning, parts of like how he sets things up.
There was very little of it from the FBI side. It was a lot of the the things that we saw.
To the point that in the episode 1 when they got the file and says, "Oh, BTK," like he knew what it was. It was like, "Oh wait, did they have a name for him already?" Like I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting it to be more of a, "Oh, there's this guy," and maybe they'll name him throughout the course of the investigation kind of thing.
Yeah.
Of course, he did kind of name himself as well. I mean, that's worth mentioning. So, but the idea
big part of this episode,
yeah. But of course, we're already that far into the story of BTK. I didn't expect that. I thought, oh no, they'll be more of the ground up after the first couple of victims start to appear. Of course, had I checked what years he was killing people, I would have predicted otherwise. But just going from what the show had shown me.
What year are we actually set in now in the show? I'm
not sure. It's after 77. I know that much.
Okay.
It's after 77, and the killings from BTK started in, I think they said 74. So it's interesting that he's already built up this kind of mystique. He's already built up this kind of fame around himself.
Yeah, I think it said he'd killed 7 people.
6 that they know of, 7 that they're estimating, but he's not claimed the 7th. Because there's a witness to that crime, which leads us to kind of the first big interview scene, which is not with the killer. I mean, we do get that this episode. We get the big killer interview scene, but
honestly, halfway through this scene, I didn't think we were getting an interview with the killer. I thought, okay, this is that scene for this episode.
Yeah, and it would have been enough because the scene's fantastic.
Oh yeah, they spoiled us by giving us both.
Because before we get there though, I mean, just going through the house and just talking about the various little things like, oh, there was indents on the carpet, so he must have sat there and watched as the kid suffocated. And he's like, that must have taken. And he's like, 46 minutes. He's accurate because he knows exactly what the coroner's told him.
Yeah, and then they talk about how at one point he tried strangling someone. Obviously, this was earlier on. It didn't go quite to plan, so had to do it again. So that, there's separate marks.
Yeah, but despite all this, despite all these mistakes and all these things, and like people being there he wasn't expecting, and having to kill extra people, he still took the time for the last kid to go down, sort of do it kind of ritualistically, where he kind of had her up on the pipes and had her kind of strung up, and that's something we get into with the interview with this brother, this witness that survived and was shot in the face and somehow survived. Which is one of those things where you think, you assume someone who gets shot in the face will die from it, but it is possible to live.
Yeah.
If you're, this is a really awful word to use in this context, but if you're lucky enough, you live.
I think it's one of those things where movies and games tell you, oh, headshot, right, that's it, you're done for, and that's it. But that's just not true.
No, I mean, if it's actually hits the brain, then I think
if it goes directly through, sure. But I mean, you can even hit like the edge of the brain and still, I mean, you have brain damage, but you can survive.
Yeah, but there's you're not necessarily die because you get hit in the cheek. There's
no, of course not.
I mean, it'll hurt and you'll have a screwed up face for the rest of your life, but like, it wouldn't necessarily kill you. And it's a very sensitive scene because I love how this parallels how they talk to the killers, because even though there's certainly some overlap where you want to make him feel as comfortable as possible because he's very nervous about talking, it's very different to the killers, where the killers, we want to kind of tricks, maybe not the right word, but at least
entice,
groom them into opening up, where with the victim you actually care about the victim's feelings. You care that the victim is going through a traumatic experience.
It's totally different. With the killers, they're sat across from them, they're talking to them like directly, whereas this, Bill never looks at him.
Well, yeah, but this is specifically a request, though. This is not just because when I say it parallels, I'm not just saying it parallels in the specifics, but it parallels in that they're being understanding of what the victim wants here. He's been understanding. It's not specifically that he's not looking. I'm sure there's plenty of victims that he could look at because the victim wouldn't have a problem with that.
I'm sure. I just meant in the sense it makes it this clear, stark difference just visually, that it's the complete opposite of that shot there.
And not even just that, but along with Bill not looking at him, we never really get a clean look at his face either. He's always kind of in the shadow. He's either out of focus or his hair's just covering enough of his face that we never get a good look at him. We never really get to see him properly. Without it being overly dramatic with like big giant shadows and all that. It's just subtle enough that we just never quite get a good look at his face.
It's plausible enough that you never doubt that they're having to really go too hard to make this unbelievable, but it always looks natural.
But you always, and I think the point of it is much like the characters, as the audience, we're respecting his privacy, we're respecting his request because he is deserving of it in a way that the killers are not.
Yeah, I think the closest we get is a point where we look at him outside through the window. And that's really interesting because it even covers up some of the dialogue with the train or whatever's going past.
There's actually one shot there's a profile shot from inside the car in the back seat, which I would say is the most we get to see of him. And it is certainly the moment where it's kind of like, he's finally getting to the point where he's really opening up about the events, and it's kind of like this is the moment where we get to know him the most, so that's why we get to see him the most in that moment. So it's a very simple little visual trick. You mentioned the train there, though, and I wanted to bring that up because even when there's not trains going past, because every so often there's a sound effect of a train, but even when the train's not going past, the music is emulating the sound of a train the entire time. And it feels, it makes the scene feel very tense to the point where
there's this constant rumble that leaves you on edge.
And not just a rumble, like there's like that sort of, not ticking, but like the clanking of the mechanical train moving.
Yeah, it's that percussive, rhythmic kind of, a train. It is so consistent in its noise.
To the point where, at one point when the real train sound effect came in, because they're under like a train overpass, right? So there is the odd train going past every so often. To the point where when one of them came in, and I think it's actually the shot you were talking about where it was looking through the window, the point where that came in, I actually just thought I was hearing a train for a while until the real train came in, and I went, "Oh no, there's a real train." And when I say that, I don't mean that I didn't notice before that the music sounded like a train. I did. But I get so lost in it that it's.
So you just assumed it was a train.
I just forgot that it was the music and not a train until the actual train came in, and then I went, "Oh, that's right, that was the music."
Yeah.
Really neat little thing in the audio there. Maybe some of the most intriguing sound design they've used so far in terms of the idea that even when the train's not there, the constant thunder of a train going past is always like hanging over him.
Yeah, it's very obvious image. Oh, well, imagery is not necessarily the right word, but symbolism probably is better in this scenario. In that, okay, even when he's not directly talking about these things, it's affecting every moment of his life.
Yeah, he's never been able to get over this. Why would he?
No, of course, obviously, but I think that it's very clear that's the purpose of that music.
And of course, the part of the reason why he's so scared of being seen or being seen talking to police, and that's why they're in civvy clothes, they're sitting in this car, not looking at each other, is because he believes that BTK will come after him, and he talks about being nervous whenever he's in a public space that he could come in, and but then we get
because he's seen his face.
Because he's seen his face.
Yeah,
fighting with a cat,
and I think it's pretty understandable as to be terrified because of that reason.
Yeah, of course.
If you were, as far as you know, the only living witness to a serial killer, yeah, you'd probably assume you're a target.
Yeah, and he, like them, kind of assumes that it was BTK, even though it's never been officially done. Although there's a piece of evidence in this scene that kind of proves it, because he describes a watch that he'd stolen from one of the first victims. I was like, okay, so that just proves it was him. That was your smoking gun in terms of connecting
Linking
this crime
evidence,
to him.
Yeah.
When we get to the actual details of the crime and BTK's demeanor, Bill, partly because he's just good at his job, but also because he's been working with Holden for a while and he's been interviewing serial killers. He maybe has a better insight in what questions to ask, and he's asking various. Obviously, there's the great moment where he asks if at any point did you notice he had an erection, and the other cop just kind of gives him this look like, what?
And obviously, we know Bill's like, hey, no, a lot of these there's a sexual component, and this is maybe important to helping identify him later.
Sorry, and understandably, he's like, I'm not 100% sure. I mean, this isn't the exact words, but I don't think so. But
he's like, I don't know. I never saw it. I never felt it. But
yeah,
you can't be certain.
But he's not sure at all. But the big thing that comes out of this though is the demeanor of him, and because Bill keeps asking, was he nervous? Was he calm? Was he excited? Was he passionate? And
even just like when he asked like how was he dressed, and isn't talking about what the clothes were, but the quality and the style. And that all leads into this, this normalcy and confidence.
Yeah. Well, to go back to his demeanor, when he talks about being tied up, like how did it feel? Was it too tight? Was he aggressive? And he's like, no, he was gentle almost. Like that was the thing that really caught Bill off guard. And then talking about his clothes, because Bill's expecting, are they dirty? Are they this? Are they that? And he's like, no, they're actually quite clean, if anything. They looked maybe even expensive.
Yeah, then he goes, they were definitely not cheap or rubbish. It was like, they look nice enough. And then he starts thinking about it. He's like, oh, that jacket. Actually, that was quite a nice jacket.
Yeah. And it paints this picture that kind of goes against everyone that Bill and Holden have interviewed. They've all been kind of, lower class, and they've all had troubled backstories. And this is kind of painting the picture of someone who has more of a normal life. And maybe that's what the interesting element of investigating BTK is compared to the others this season, is that, as we know, he does have a wife. He has a family life of some sort.
He is completely opposed to every theory they have, which presumably is why it's so hard to catch him.
They expect him to have a really simple, easy to keep job. And we know that he's actually a tradesman. He's been trained in what he does. He works in electronics and stuff like that. So it goes against what they know and what they're expecting. And that's the interesting part of it. It's like, okay, well, how what do they learn from this, and how do they figure some of this stuff out? Because when they're talking, when Bill gets back and Holden comes to see him, he's like, oh, BTK, he recognizes the work. He's like, and they start talking about it. All the theories that Holden shoots out, we know most of them are kind of wrong. Like he says, it's likely that he does live alone, that he has a lot of time, so maybe he doesn't have a proper job, or so on and so on.
It's really interesting that he is so wrong, because we know it, but all his reasoning makes perfect sense.
Yeah, all of his reasoning jives with what we've seen them go through in the past season, and all of it makes sense from all those interviews and everything else.
All of it boils down to the point where we go, you're missing too much information. You haven't got a link to theorize that this is possible yet, because all your current evidence points to just one type.
Yeah. Um, so so it's really interesting to see this. And obviously, what they want to do is they want to shift things around in terms of, because they've got a schedule of who they're going to go see in the various prisons, and they want to shift it around to go see Son of Sam next, mainly because the idea of sending in the symbol and the letters to the police and the press are very reminiscent of him.
It looks like he's a bit of a fanboy.
Yeah. And I'm not going to lie. Later on, when Son of Sam sees the symbol that BTK's got, he said, are those boobs?" I actually thought the same thing when Bill first drew it. They look like boobs.
No, I thought that too, and I think that's very intentional. It leads into that sexual element, right? Is okay, even if it is supposed to be a B, kind of looks like boobs.
Yeah, it looks like boobs. And Wendy, interestingly, is like doesn't want them to do this. He's like, "Oh no, we can't just shift around our schedule." And Bill's like, "No, like, because she even says like, "What are we shifting around things around to help with active cases?" And it's like, "Well, yeah, like, and that's one of the things we even heard Gunn say last episode." It's like, of course.
Bill's like, yeah, cases take priority, whereas she's like, no. The research, that's the important thing. Build the research, and we'll do cases in the future.
Yeah. It's hard not to say with Bill on this one that, if we can actually help stop someone from being murdered, we should probably do that as a priority over.
Yeah, but I understand her reasoning is, okay, if we get through it in a system and actually make sense of it all, it might be ready to use quicker than just trying to leap to specific cases, rather than chasing after a case now and a case there. Once it's complete, it'll just be a complete resource ready to use for any of them, like as and when.
Kind
So
of
I
hard.
can understand her logic.
It's kind of hard not to try and help in the meantime, though.
No, it is. It is. I'm not saying she's right. I'm saying I understand why she's saying it.
It's super difficult, and of course she takes Bill to the bar and tries to tell him what she thinks he doesn't know about Holden, and then discovers that they both know, and they basically agree to keep each other in the loop about all this stuff. And again, we advance the whole barmaid thing where she's clearly got a crush on this barmaid who confirms that she is also gay in this. Well, she kind of plays it off as if she's just said it to get rid of the guys who are trying to hit on her.
Yeah. But then she's they always see what they want to see, and gives her a smile. And it's like, is she just seeing what she wants to see now, or was that the truth?
I guess we'll find out, because I feel like it's not the last we're going to see of it.
Almost certainly not.
But we go to the prison, Attica specifically, and I know this name, which is why I remember the name of the prison. Mainly just because of Dog Day Afternoon, when he starts chatting Attica over and over again. That is why I remember the name of this prison.
Fair enough.
But they go, and I will say this, because I just had a quick look on Wiki at this killer after I watched it, just out of curiosity's sake. They nailed the casting on this dude.
I was going to say, every time, this show, God damn it, I've forgotten how good their casting was.
The mugshot on Wikipedia looks like this guy in the show. It's insane.
This is one of the few serial killers that the show's done that I've been familiar with. Like I've actually read into in the past, and so when this scene got going, I was like, oh yeah, this is a great story.
Yeah. So they start, and this is the thing. So Wendy says, "Hey, you're taking Holden into this situation. This could set him off, have another panic attack. So you have to watch and maybe take the lead." And Bill does to begin with. Bill kind of takes the lead. But what's interesting is that it's not very long when Bill starts to ask about the crime, because he cracks a few jokes about the demons told you to do this, and you talk to the dog, and
but Holden is visibly uncomfortable. When Bill asks him to pass over the paper with the symbol on, he looks nervous. Like he looks like he's struggling.
But when Bill goes to start asking about the first crime, Holden's just heard enough that his curiosity that he's always had kind of comes back.
Outweighed the anxiety.
Yeah. It kind of peaks, and he kind of interrupts Bill and just doesn't let him finish his sentence, because Bill's just going to go matter of fact, let's talk about the first victim, and instead Holden goes, "Oh, but the demons, you say, what was that like then? So do you hear them and you talk to he starts asking, he clearly becomes fascinated.
He kind of takes like a lawyer approach in the way he questions it, I think, where he's like trying to trip him up.
Kind of. I do genuinely believe, though, he actually wants to hear about all these different things. He wants to go through the psyche of it before he even gets to the victims. He doesn't want to talk about the victims one by one like Bill does. He wants to, why, how, and when they talk to you, what does it sound like, and this and that. And
there's a point where where he goes, oh, you hear him in the walls, and he goes, oh, so the walls there, not the dogs. He's like, just trying to get this all straight, and he's got that look. It's like, yeah, I'm onto you now.
Hmm. And the beautiful thing is, he does eventually trip him up, and he essentially says this is all bullshit, and this was all bullshit for the psychiatrist. I'm sure they bought it. I'm sure the lawyers bought it. I'm sure the jury, whatever, bought it. But this is all bullshit. You don't believe any of this. You saw it because he admits to seeing The Exorcist and reading about like Satanism and stuff, and like this is all fabricated. And he just looks because essentially he provokes the idea that someone is because he keeps mentioning this legal dispute that someone's got the rights to
someone
his
has the
story.
rights to his life story and is gonna tell the story how they want and make a shitload of money.
Yeah. And he gets basically the idea of someone taking credit for things is what's enough to put him over the edge where he's just like, yeah, they bought it. It just admits that it's all made up bullshit, that he never really heard anything.
It was a really sound deduction given that he couldn't let it go with the name. They were called, whatever the media was calling him. It was after the gun, it was the 44 killer.
Yeah, the 44 caliber killer, or whatever it was. Yeah.
Yeah, and he couldn't let it go, so he had to do it himself. It was the controlling the story, and that's when he's like, okay, this is what he can't leave it, let it go. Yeah, he has to have that control.
Yeah, well, another little detail from Bill that I liked is that after like a few questions from Hold'em, and he realized that Hold'em was just going off, and that was it. That was it. Hold'em was taking the show. He just leaned back in his chair and started smoking. Like he just gave up.
Yeah,
yeah.
But it wasn't like a.
No,
he wasn't
like an
annoyed
upset.
about it.
Yeah, it wasn't like an upset give up. It was just like, I just he's holding
like,
his back.
He's back.
Yeah, I can relax. And he says that as much to Wendy. And Wendy quite rightly says we should still be cautious and keep an eye on him.
It's definitely going to go wrong when he meets Manson.
Yes, Manson's the one that's going to screw up.
Because that's kind of Manson's whole thing.
Yeah, Manson's whole thing is manipulating other people. So
and being charismatic as shit to a scary degree.
Yeah,
that's kind of his whole shtick. And given that the thing that set him off in the first place was the act of friendship, affection, the hug, right? That's what set this off in the first place.
Yeah,
I think he's going to struggle with Manson.
Yeah, it'll be the one that it'll be the arch nemesis that he can't quite overcome, and just in the sense of like a verbal arch nemesis, because that's what he's holding superpower as. He's not a physical fighter. His power is to walk into these meetings and talk them into telling them stuff, and so we get to like talking about Son of Sam's like motif and how he used to like drive around at night scanning for and because he even like because they give him enough information to there's this guy the BTK I'm like, hey, we're maybe not exactly the same, right, but I guarantee you he's like scoping places out, and I guarantee you that he is going back to the scene of the crimes because it's
you can't help it.
Because you can't help it. It's this sacred place where just because obviously they keep trying to turn it sexual. This is the other thing that he does that's really noticeable is that anytime they try to imply that his crimes were in any way sexually motivated, he has to make it clear that no, like all my sexual fantasies were all completely separate from my murdering. It wasn't sex crimes.
He's very aware and happy to admit that he has these sexual fantasies, and they are relatively bad in their own right, but he's like, he never acted on those. They were never a part of the murder, as far as he's concerned.
Because he wants to
a part of it.
As Wendy puts it, he wants to be seen as an evil mastermind, and being a sex predator kind of just taints that. Yeah. Which is interesting because it's almost like I think the thing that we have to, and I'm sure we referenced this last season, but I think the thing that obviously springs to mind in the plot of this is Silence of the Lambs. I'm
sure we talked about this last season.
But the idea of Clarice going to Hannibal Lecter, and like I think Hannibal Lecter, I'm not saying Hannibal Lecter and BTK are remotely alike in any way, shape, or form, really, but just in the sense that he is not, he's an upper class, well educated individual who is, like very articulate. I mean, way more articulate than BTK. BTK is still a relatively normal guy by comparison, but the idea that this is someone who is the opposite of what you think a serial killer is. So I think, and this guy, Son of Sam, kind of thinks he's that. He wants to believe he's an upper class serial killer.
Yeah, and he's borderline. They're like, oh, does he fit into our classifications as easily as anyone else? And they're like, well, not really. They kind of end up going, well, I suppose he's there, but it's borderline. And he talks he himself. When Holmes says, oh, the shrinks, I bet they bought it. I bet they believed it all. And he says, "Oh, I believed it as well." Like some of it, because he admits he's easily susceptible.
Hmm.
So when he says, "Oh, there's nothing sexual about my killings," I think he believes that. That's not him just kind of putting on the front. That's not an act. I think or maybe it was an act at first, but now I don't. I think he believes that there wasn't anything sexual about it.
To me, what this episode said about this and about Manson, and the way that Wendy was kind of resisting, especially Manson, because he's not exactly the same thing that they go after, is that I feel like the ultimate lesson here is going to be that all of these, no matter how different they seem, are going to end up being valid to the overall thesis, because the way this guy hunts victims, the way he kind of builds up to it, still feels very comparable to a lot of the others in the sense of the fulfillment.
It does. They talk
The
about
rush.
how that's why I think they ultimately placed him in organized, right? Because he has enough characteristics in that he hunts. It's not just even though it's random people. Ultimately, it's not at a random on a whim.
Yeah, well, it's random people, and he doesn't even know when it's going to happen. He goes around waiting for someone that he likes to look off to be in the right place at the right time. But he knows all the places he checks out. He says that he's studied escape plans, he's studied the layouts, he knows where's quiet, where's busy. Like, he's put thought into the logistics of it, but he accepts that there's a random element that he can't control, and he just kind of waits until it sits in his, it lands in his lap, essentially, because he's
he doesn't try and force it.
But he is preparing a lot for it, so he's absolutely organized.
Yeah. No doubt about it.
Yeah. He's an interesting killer, though, that he's killing with a gun. I feel like most serial killers you think of don't kill with guns.
Yeah.
Yeah, it tends to be different than that. Obviously, lots of people are murdered by guns, but serial killers in this way we think of them, where they're kind of hunting victim by victim, I feel like tends to be more of an intimate thing. Kind of what we talk about a lot in this show, where it's this thing they want to feel the person dying in their arms, or they want the satisfaction, the sexual satisfaction, whatever it may be.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that.
And while he complains that the press were comparing his gun to his penis, I feel like there's something a lot more phallic about a knife, or even strangling, because it's just a barehanded physical.
No, I get that. Yeah.
Interaction. So
yeah, because obviously the joke is it's a small bullet, small gun, small penis. That's the joke they're talking about here, I assume, right?
Well, I mean, Bill cracks that joke at one point.
Yeah.
Although I would speculate,
or is it a big bullet and it's overcompensating?
Yeah, I would speculate that if he felt, if he felt, what's the word I'm looking for? If he felt emasculated or whatever, that's not the word I was looking for, but that'll do. If he felt emasculated, then he would buy a giant cannon to overcompensate.
Yeah. You're right. That's
big Desert Eagle or something.
Yeah.
Assuming we're sticking with handgun, I mean, you could go with a shotgun, I suppose, if you really wanted to go for it. But
no, because it's a caliber, so it's a bullet.
Yeah.
It's not a shell. In this scenario, so it's definitely a handgun.
Oh, true. Oh no, I know it's I mean, it's always a handgun. It was always a 44. I'm just saying in the context.
Yeah, but I don't know what a 44 is, size wise in a gun.
It's a little revolver, I'm sure.
I love it. We've got no idea.
I've got an image in my head that I think is in the ballpark of what a 44 gun is.
Okay, a Magnum.
Aye, it's a little revolver.
I mean, I wouldn't say little revolver, but sure, a revolver. Yeah. They're fairly small guns.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Just go back with what we were talking about that started this. The size of the gun.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. I'm glad we discussed that point to its conclusion.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what we're here for.
Yeah. But yeah, no, this was a great conversation, and much like a lot of, because I mean, this episode was like 46 minutes, and I'd say like 70% of the runtime is the two interviews. Like that takes up the vast majority of the runtime, and quite rightly, because they have their own little stories. They sort of peak and dip in their own little stories, and then have endings to the point where, see, the first interview, I genuinely thought he was going to commit suicide at the end.
Oh, really?
I thought he was going down or up the stairs to the train to just jump in front of the train. I really thought he was going to do that.
Oh.
Because
I mean, it never crossed my mind personally.
Because he got to such an emotional, scared state by the end of it. And and credit to Bill, because Bill is so sympathetic throughout, and he keeps telling him it's okay if he doesn't know something, or if like he keeps being as gentle as he can throughout this whole interview process.
Yeah.
But of course, the other one is the difference is it's Super Holden coming in to do his magic with Sam.
I'm glad we got the double of this in this episode, in the sense that episode 1 was good, right? I liked episode 1. It was a solid, right? Okay, this is where we are. It's everything again, and I'm like, oh yeah, I like this show well enough. And this episode, we're like, oh, this is why I love this show.
Yeah,
because these episodes, these scenes, not even episodes, it's just these scenes are phenomenal. And I mean, they're quite long scenes, admittedly, so I don't feel bad about that.
No, they give them the time they deserve, and they really let them play out. Like I say, their own little their stories on their own within the scene. Obviously, they add to the overall thing.
You could just watch interview scenes of this show and still come out with a compelling narrative on each individual interview.
Yeah, you could almost turn it into like Her Story, the video game, where you could watch the different interview clips and like almost use that to try and solve like a fake crime based on all the analysis of all the different killers.
You could when they're this well interviewed, yeah.
Yeah. But no. Again, the performance. I mean, I mentioned the actor looking a lot like the killer, but I love the performance. I think all the performances from all the people they've cast as killers in this show have all been so compelling, and it's the sort of thing where they could easily get kind of over the top or silly or whatever, but they've all been unique for a start, which is kind of impressive. And this guy does, like, going with his, like, he's not really that much of a psychopath in the way that the others are. He's not as, like, erratic. He's more calculated, and that he pretends to be a psychopath. Like, his demeanor, like, adds up to that. Like, the way he sits there kind of casually feels a lot like that. You never get the impression that he's going to jack off in the corner of the cell the way that, the shoe guy did last season.
Yeah.
Very different. And then very different demeanor to Kemper, and very different demeanor to whoever else. So,
the serial killers have been probably at a high point of the show, weirdly, in the casting and the performances, because you got all these various guests in emulating these real people, and just coming across fantastically for these interviews.
Yeah, and then we do have another thing that happens, actually, at the end. There's also a scene leading into it when Bill first gets back from the interview early on. He comes home, and of course there's a lot of talk in those scenes about, like I say, people being scared of their homes and like kind of being terrified that BTK is around. And then of course talking to the victim kind of like really emphasized this kind of just casual nature of the way that he just came home, he just walked in as if it was nothing, and that was it was over. And obviously, I mean, again, the brother was like, mortified that he maybe made the wrong choice. He felt like a coward because he ran after he'd been shot already. Like, he thought, I'll go get help. That's the more useful of the two things. Because it was either that or find something to try and hit him with and fight him. But at this point, he's already been shot in the face. Like, you're not in the physical condition to take him on. Like, you're not.
And Bill obviously like, hey, no, you did the right thing. If you'd gone in there, you'd be dead as well.
Yeah.
So it probably is meaningless to the kid at this point. He's probably heard that from everyone, but it doesn't help.
Yeah, and even because I actually wished to went into this more with the Son of Sam as well. Bill mentioned that you had people in the city like changing their hair, women in the city cutting their hair to different styles because I assume he had a type. It was always just like similar hairstyles that he went after, and this idea of the hysteria in New York, around this time, would have been interesting. I wish they kind of talked about that a little bit more, like what he caused the panic of the public. But anyway, so he gets back from this interview and he comes home. No one really greets him because assume it's late. And he comes in, he gets a drink, and he notices the back door in the kitchen is just ajar. It's open.
Yeah, and he goes and looks out. Nothing there. And
he shuts it. And then he's concerned enough that he doesn't shout out for his wife. He just looks around. And I think this is actually his tactical mind thinking. If someone is in here, he doesn't want to alert them to his presence. He wants to find them subtly.
And, he is particularly on edge after this interview. Where, he's just been talking about feeling unsafe in your home, and he's not a guy that's this stuff gets to him easily. We've seen that.
Yeah, and we even remember the cop even said to him that a lot of the other cops in the department have transferred because it became so public, and because BTK was sending them letters, they worried that he might go after some of their families, and a lot of them got scared and left and went to other towns.
Yeah, but we had a lot last season, I think, with Bill bringing work home and not wanting anyone, the wife, to see this stuff because he's like, no, I can deal with this, but this isn't for everyone.
And of course, he just ends up going into the bedroom, and the mother and son are both in the bed sleeping, and she kind of wakes up and is like, "Oh, what's up?" And he's like, "Did you leave the back door open?" She's like, "Oh, I was taking out the trash." And you just get a sense, oh, she accidentally didn't shut it properly.
She's like, yeah, she could have just left it.
Yeah, but he, of course, is on edge because of these stories, because of what he's just went through in the last 24 hours.
Any other day, he'd have probably just shrugged it off.
Yeah, but it's just enough to put him on edge, and it makes you because there's almost because the ending scene really paints it in a really interesting light because a cop shows up at the door and it was this little shifty guy that I thought he was kind of suspicious at first until he pulled out his badge. I'm like, oh, he's just a cop, all right.
I'm not convinced he is.
You're not convinced he is?
I'll get to that in a minute.
Okay. The way that he kind of was just shaken by the crime and the way he spoke to Bill afterwards made me feel like he was. But
well, here's the thing: he didn't really mention that he was a cop till after Bill said he was FBI, right? It was just before.
It's before.
He was, but he wasn't really shaking and on edge too much until after that point. When he was just looking for for the wife, he was a lot more relaxed. Not he wasn't calm, but he was more relaxed. I think he got nervous when he was like, "Oh, this guy's FBI."
I actually thought it looked shifty from the start. As soon as I saw him before the door even
No, fair
opened. If you end up being right and he's a serial killer, then fair play.
All I'm saying is, because he comes in and says, "Oh, are you the realtor for this house? There's been a murder. That I don't know if he says there's been a murder, but we found a body." And he wants details of who's been there, keys, such like, and she gives him the code for the key box. And I'm like, oh, okay, was there a body there already, or is this now, okay, he can get in now?
I think you're reaching here because Bill can check quite quickly if there's been a body found here.
He can, but I don't know if he will straight away, like, because he kind of at the end of it, he almost shrugs it off because his wife's a little, because it's like, oh, who'd have thought that'd happen around here, and he's just like, well, it happens everywhere.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you're reaching here a little bit with where you're taking this scene. Because to me, this scene said one of two things. It's because he asks like, "Hey, is there any way someone could get into the house otherwise?" And she says, "Oh, she always makes sure to lock the doors." And of course, I immediately think back to earlier on when she clearly left the back door unhinged, and I'm thinking, so it's suggesting one of two things here to me: is that one, she accidentally left the back door open, and she's been like that with other things as well, and because of that, someone was able to use one of the empty houses for a murder, right?
Yeah,
that's number one.
Say, in her defense, there, I think you're far more likely to leave your own door open because you're in and out. It's regular, right? It's your own home.
Sure. But the second possibility is that she didn't leave her back door open. Someone was creeping about in the house, and whoever was creeping about in the house is the same person who was in the other house, where she works. And maybe the reason why he was creeping about her house is because he's looking for access because he knows she's the realtor.
Keys,
yeah. Which is why I don't think it's this guy who's a cop, because I feel like at this point his cover's blown. Like, Bill's seen him and he can check this information. So, and even though I do think the idea that someone was in this house is maybe a little bit hokey potentially, it did make me go, ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it is.
But at the same time, I like the idea that she has just accidentally left something open, because we've seen that she does that sometimes. And, we have to kind of deal with that maybe as time goes on. Either way, this is clearly setting something up. Like, we're going to get a little bit of follow-up. I don't know if it's going to become a main plot, but I can certainly see hearing about the search for the local killer that maybe Bill won't be involved in. We'll hear about it occasionally,
Maybe. I can see, though, them getting involved, maybe putting the other stuff aside, especially Bill, because it's kind of, it's connected to his wife. It's personal. So he's maybe more invested in this than any of the other serial killers. It's like, oh, no, this is personal. I can help with this.
Yeah. So that was a really interesting final scene. But yeah, to me, as much as I thought this guy looked shifty, I can't believe that he's really the killer, just because, Bill can check this. Like I say, Bill, there's nothing to stop Bill from confirming his story now.
There's not. And like I said, I probably am over, just reaching, but it was on my mind when I was watching it. It's like, he's so shifty that I don't trust him.
But to be fair, when he says that he just came from talking to the next of kin and he's never seen a crime like this, and that's why he's shaken up. Like, I'm like, yeah, that sounds pretty justifiable, to be honest.
It does, yeah.
That's why he looks so distraught. And
it does, but again, no, I was going through all these possibilities, but again, just for the sake of counter arguing, when Bill's like, "Oh, you sure you don't want to share anything?" He's like, "No, I really can't." And in my mind, I'm going, "Okay, he probably just can't, right? That's the rules." But there's a possibility that he's like, "Don't want to say anything that'll incriminate."
Okay, I will say it does feel kind of hokey if he does end up being a killer, because a bit coincidental that a killer happens to show straight up to his door, which I guess is kind of true still if someone was in the house earlier, but because there's
I'm probably wrong. Don't be wrong. I agree. I'm probably wrong.
There is the question though: does BTK ever become aware of people in the FBI looking for? Because if the local cops were worried about him targeting them, then does he ever find out that people in the FBI are looking for him somehow and know who they are? Like, is it? I mean,
if he does and knows who they are, I think they're less worried because they've got distance that the local don't have.
Sure. But like, and I don't think he's there yet anyway. But like, is that a possibility? And if his relationship with his wife deteriorates, if he ends up killing his wife, and obviously he probably doesn't want to do that because that paints him as a suspect in that really quickly because it's his wife. He doesn't have any personal connection to the other victims. So
it's the randomness of it is what lets you get away with it for so long.
So we'll see. But there is a local killer, and and I can almost see it being like we're looking for a killer, like we just hear about it in the background. But by the end of the season, we find out, it was actually not like a serial killer. It was like a drug deal gone wrong, or it was like someone killed someone over a beef or a vendetta. It wasn't like what we were thinking.
It's the season 3 plot. Like it's kind of bubbling away, and they're like, right, okay, it's a serial killer now. Come on, guys.
Maybe, but I can almost see the point being that he gets himself worked up over it, thinking it's this, and it just turns out to be just a random one-off thing, because that happens a lot.
Yeah, he's just seeing things where there's nothing.
Yeah, it's making him paranoid, and it would tie into him seeing the door and like suspecting someone's maybe in the house.
It would, yeah.
So
it would be a sign that the job is getting to him. Which again, I talked about. I think stoic's probably the right word. He kind of takes it all on the chin. It would be interesting to see, if that's how it's getting to him.
Yeah, so that was episode 2 of Mindhunter. You can let us know what you thought of the episode in the comments below. You can like and subscribe, all the usual stuff. You can get us on the Twitters at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. If you want to support the show and the channel and everything we do here and keep all the reviews coming, you can do that financially over at patreon.com/mailedfuzztv, where you can support us for as little as $1 per month. And every dollar does help and help keep all the content on the way. So go have a look and see what sort of bonuses and exclusives you can get for supporting us. Otherwise, that is us. Check out other stuff we're doing. We've got other TV shows being reviewed. But yeah, let us know what you think in the comments. Thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?